This revenge story contains intense acts of retribution that may be excessive and could be disturbing to some viewers.
I never thought I'd be that guy. Michael, the elementary school teacher in Harmony Creek, population too small to matter. Susanna and I, we were supposed to be it. The golden couple, teaching across the hall from each other. Now, the bell rang, signaling the end of the day. Third graders scrambled out the door, yelling about after-school snacks and video games. I started stacking papers, a dull ache settling behind my eyes. "Mr. Callow?" A tiny voice. I looked down. Little Lily Thompson, fidgeting with the hem of her shirt, her eyes wide. "Yes, Lily." She hesitated, chewing on her lip. It's about Mrs. Callow." My gut clenched. What about her? I tried to keep my voice even. "Yesterday, after school, I saw her with Mr. Rock." She looked at her shoes. They were kissing by the music room. Kissing. Alex, the PE teacher with the ridiculously sculpted hair and a smile that could charm the socks off a statue. My wife, with him. "Are you sure, Lily?" My voice sounded distant, like it was coming from another room. She nodded, her eyes welling up. "I saw them. It was a big kiss." "Okay, Lily. Thank you for telling me." I managed a weak smile. "You can go now." She scurried off, and I slumped into my chair. Kissing. My Susanna. With Alex. The thought felt like a punch to the solar plexus. Impossible. Susanna wouldn't. The seed of doubt had been planted, a tiny, poisonous seed that was already sending roots down into the soil of my mind. The drive home was a blur. I kept replaying Lily's words, searching for a logical explanation. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Lily had seen something else. Maybe. I pulled into the driveway, the house looking just as it always did. Neat, welcoming hours. But now a cold dread seeped into my bones. I opened the door, calling out, "Susanna, I'm home." No answer. Then I heard it. Her voice coming from the living room, soft, playful, flirty. I crept closer, my heart pounding against my ribs. The door was slightly ajar. "I had so much fun yesterday too, Alex," she purred into the phone. "I never knew PE teachers were so athletic." I froze. I could feel the blood draining from my face. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't some innocent conversation. I can't wait until tomorrow. Maybe we can get down on the mats and practice our wrestling moves," she cooed. Yes, the kids will be gone then. My hand clenched into a fist. Susanna, my Susanna, cheating. The world tilted on its axis. The comfortable life I knew, the happy marriage I thought I had, shattered into a million pieces. I backed away from the door, silent and unseen. Confrontation would have to wait. I needed proof. Cold, hard, undeniable proof. I had to know for sure. Revenge would be the dish of the day. I couldn't just burst in there, screaming accusations. She'd deny it, gaslight me. I needed evidence, something concrete to shatter her denials. The idea made me nauseous, but I couldn't back down. The next morning, I felt like a spy in some B-movie. Planting a bug? Really? I almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. I rummaged through the house, found an old digital voice recorder I had used for college lectures. Small, inconspicuous. Perfect. During breakfast, Susanna was humming, oblivious to the turmoil churning inside me. She packed her bag for the day, and as she turned to grab her coffee, I slipped the recorder into her tote. My hands were shaking. "Everything okay, Mike?" she asked, her brow furrowed. "Yeah, just tired," I muttered, avoiding her gaze. "Big lesson plan today." Liar. At school, I had another task. The music room. Lily said they'd been kissing there. It was a risk, but I had to see if they met there regularly. I found an old webcam in the AV closet. Dust-covered but functional. During my prep period, I snuck into the music room. The camera was mounted on a tripod and camouflaged behind some sheet music. I angled it to capture the doorway, trying to be as discreet as possible. This was insane. This wasn't the kind of guy I ever saw myself as. Back in my classroom, I kept replaying the scene in my head. Susanna and Alex locked in some illicit embrace. The thought made my stomach clench. Days turned into weeks. Each evening, I'd anxiously retrieve the recorder from Susanna's bag, plug it into my computer, and listen. The first few recordings were innocuous, teacher chatter, lunchroom noise, the murmur of students practicing their scales. Then came the breakthrough. A hushed conversation, barely audible above the background noise. Meet me in the music room after the faculty meeting. That was Susanna. Wouldn't miss it. Alex's voice, low and husky. I've been thinking about our kiss all day. Rage. Pure, unadulterated rage. It coursed through my veins, making my hands tremble. I wanted to confront them both, to scream and shout and tear their world apart. But I needed to stay calm. I needed more evidence. The webcam footage was equally damning. Grainy, black and white, but unmistakable. Susanna and Alex meeting in the music room, their bodies pressed together in a passionate embrace. I felt sick watching it. Each new piece of evidence felt like another nail in the coffin of our marriage. Each stolen kiss, each whispered word, a betrayal, etched in my memory. I was drowning in it. I was suffocating. But I wasn't going to let them win. I was going to expose them. I was going to make them pay. I was going to get my revenge. I knew Jane, Alex's wife, suspected something. Maybe it was time to find an ally. The weight of the evidence was crushing me. The whispered conversations, the grainy webcam footage. It was all there, undeniable proof of Susanna's betrayal. But the thought of actually confronting her still sent shivers of dread down my spine. It was easier to live in denial, to pretend that everything was normal, even though I knew it was a lie. But I couldn't keep living a lie. I needed answers. I needed to know why. I decided to start slow. No accusations, just questions. Maybe, just maybe, there was a reasonable explanation. A momentary lapse in judgment, a drunken mistake. Anything but the cold, calculated affair that the evidence suggested. I chose a night when we were both home early. I made dinner, her favorite lasagna, a pathetic attempt to recreate the illusion of normalcy. We sat at the table, the air thick with unspoken tension. How was your day, honey? I asked, trying to sound casual. Susanna shrugged, picking at her food. Fine, same old, same old. Third graders are a handful this week. Yeah, I said. Lily Thompson told me something interesting today. Something about the music room. Her eyes flickered, just for a second, but it was enough. A spark of fear quickly masked by a practiced smile. Oh? She said, her voice a little too bright. What about it? She said she saw you and Alex there, after school. Kissing. The smile vanished. Her face paled. That's ridiculous, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Lily must have imagined it. Did she? I pressed, my voice dangerously calm. Because I have a hard time believing a little girl would make something like that up. She pushed her plate away, her hands fidgeting in her lap. Look, Michael, I don't know what Lily thinks she saw, but nothing happened. Alex and I were just talking about a new music program. Talking? In a passionate embrace? The lie was so blatant. It was insulting. Is that so? Because I also heard you talking to Alex on the phone yesterday about wrestling moves. Unless wrestling is part of the new school program. Her eyes widened. She knew. She knew that I knew. The game was up. Michael, I can explain, she pleaded, her voice cracking. Explain what, Susanna? Explain how you betrayed me? Explain how you lied to my face every single day? Explain how you've been sneaking around with that glorified gym teacher right here, right under my nose. The anger I'd been suppressing finally exploded, ripping through me like a wildfire. She started to cry, tears streaming down her face. "It just happened," she sobbed. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I was lonely, and Alex, he just made me feel alive again." Lonely? I poured my heart and soul into this marriage, into this family, and she was lonely? And what about me, Susanna? How did you think I'd feel? Did you even stop to think about the consequences of your actions? She shook her head, her sobs intensifying. "I'm sorry, Michael, I'm so sorry." But the word felt hollow, meaningless. The trust was gone, irrevocably shattered. "I need you to be honest with me, Susanna. How long has this been going on?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She hesitated, then finally confessed. "A few months," she admitted, her voice choked with tears. "Since the beginning of the school year. Months. Months of lies, months of deceit, months of betrayal." The pain was unbearable. I stood up from the table, knocking my chair over in the process. "I can't do this," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I can't be with someone I don't trust. I think you should leave." The silence in the house was a living thing, pressing down on me, suffocating me with memories. Susanna's perfume still lingered in the air, a cruel reminder of intimacy now tainted. I was running on fumes, fueled by anger and a desperate need to make them accountable. I couldn't let them just waltz into new lives while I picked up the pieces of mine. Revenge. The word tasted bitter on my tongue, but the idea wouldn't let go. It was time to talk to Jane. I'd seen her in the hallways, her usual sunny disposition replaced by a haunted look. We were in the same boat, capsized by the same storm. Maybe together we could find some semblance of justice. I waited for her by her beat-up SUV after school. Her shoulders slumped as she loaded a box of papers. "Jane?" I kept my voice low, avoiding drawing attention. She startled, nearly dropping the box. Her eyes were puffy, underlined with dark circles. "Michael," she said, her voice flat. "What do you want?" "I need to talk to you," I said, my gaze direct. "About Alex and Susanna," she sighed, a sound heavy with resignation. "I knew it. I knew something was off. He's been distant, working late, suddenly interested in Pilates," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I have proof," I said, and then I just laid it all out, no sugarcoating. The recordings, the photos, all the dirty details. I could see the color drain from her face as I spoke, but never interrupted. When I finished, she was shaking. She slammed her fist on the hood of her car. "That son of a bitch!" Her voice cracked. "I'm going to kill him." "I know," I said, trying to inject some calm into the situation. "It's a lot to process. That's why I'm here. I'm not sure what to do, and I need help figuring that out." She took a deep breath, visibly trying to regain control. "Okay," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "Okay, we expose them. We make sure everyone knows what kind of people they really are. We will inflict public shame on the two of them so that what happened never happens again. No one else will have to deal with such a disgrace." "How?" I asked. I was thinking of going to HR, but I didn't know if that would do enough. Jane's eyes hardened. "HR is too gentle. No, that will only get them transferred. We need to get them fired and humiliated," she said, a dark determination in her voice. "I have an idea. I have some tech skills but could use someone who understands the school system." "Obviously R it, Jane." We spent the next hour hashing out a plan, fueled by righteous anger and a shared desire for retribution. We considered going to the local paper, but that felt too messy. We needed something targeted, something that would hit them where it hurt most. Their careers, their reputations. The staff meeting. It was perfect. A captive audience, a platform for maximum impact. I had an old college buddy, a computer geek who owed me a favor. I called him Explained I needed to play a presentation at the meeting, nothing too specific. He agreed to set up the projector and sound system, no questions asked. Jane, with her insider knowledge, volunteered to whisper some rumors to Mrs. Davison, the principal. Nothing concrete, just enough to plant the seed of suspicion to make her pay closer attention. The plan was audacious, risky, maybe even insane. But it was the only way I could see to truly punish them, to make them feel the weight of their betrayal. I looked at Jane, her face a mask of fury. "Are you sure about this?" I asked. "Once we do this, there's no going back." A grim smile twisted her lips. "Absolutely," she said. "They made their choices. Now it's time to face the consequences." We shook hands, a silent alliance forged in the fires of betrayal, ready to unleash hell. The fluorescent lights of the school auditorium hummed, casting a sickly yellow glow over the tense faces of the Harmony Creek Elementary staff. My palms were sweating, the remote slick in my grasp. It was day. Operation Truth Bomb was about to commence. I caught Jane's eye across the room. She gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod. We were in this together, sink or swim. Susanna and Alex were huddled near the back row, looking like they'd both swallowed something particularly sour. They were pointedly not looking at me. Good. Let them stew in their guilt. Mrs. Davison, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, droned on about the upcoming budget cuts, her voice a monotonous drone. I barely registered her words. My entire focus was on the moment when I would step up to the podium and unleash hell. Finally, she wrapped it up. "And now," she announced, her voice lacking any warmth, "Michael has a presentation for us regarding the new interdisciplinary curriculum initiative." My cue. I stood, my legs feeling like lead. I walked toward the stage, each step feeling like an eternity. The projector flickered to life, casting a beam of light on the screen behind me. I swallowed hard, trying to dislodge the lump in my throat. "Good morning, everyone," I began, my voice surprisingly steady. "I'm going to deviate slightly from the planned agenda today. Instead of discussing the curriculum, I want to address a matter of significant concern regarding the ethical conduct of two members of our staff." A ripple of unease went through the room. Heads turned, whispers erupted. Susanna and Alex visibly stiffened. "Over the past few weeks," I continued, my voice gaining strength, "I have become aware of a situation that constitutes a serious breach of trust, a violation of professional ethics, and a profound betrayal of personal vows." I paused for effect, letting my words hang in the air. "I believe it's important for all of you to be aware of what has been happening right here, under our noses." I clicked the remote. The screen behind me flashed, and Susanna's voice filled the auditorium, amplified by the school's sound system. "Meet me in the music room after the faculty meeting." The recording was clear, crisp, undeniable. A gasp rippled through the room. All eyes snapped to Susanna, who looked like she was about to faint. Alex's face was ashen. The recording continued, playing snippets of their conversations, whispered rendezvous, stolen kisses, explicit confessions. The room was utterly silent, save for the damning voices emanating from the speakers. I watched as the shock registered on the faces of my colleagues. Mrs. Peterson, the sweet, elderly librarian, looked like she might have a stroke. Mr. Johnson, the gruff history teacher, stared in disbelief. When the recording ended, I clicked the remote again. The webcam footage flickered to life. The image was grainy, black and white, but unmistakable. Susanna and Alex entwined in a passionate embrace in the music room, their bodies pressed together. There was no denying what was happening. A collective murmur swept through the room, a wave of shock and disgust. "This is outrageous," Susanna shrieked, jumping to her feet. "This is a complete invasion of privacy. This is illegal." "Is it, Susanna?" I said, my voice cold and hard. Because what's also outrageous is betraying your husband, your marriage vows, and this entire community. Is this really all my fault? Alex finally found his voice, his face contorted with shame. This is a personal matter, he stammered. It has nothing to do with any of you. Oh, I think it has everything to do with us, Alex. Mrs. Davison boomed, her voice echoing through the room. You're setting a bad example. You have a position of power, and yet you are abusing that power. I decided to jump back in. It has everything to do with this school, Alex, I said, my voice rising with anger. It has to do with your blatant disregard for the values we're supposed to uphold, the trust we're supposed to maintain. It has to do with the fact that you've been sneaking around behind our backs, lying and deceiving everyone. I gestured to the screen where the incriminating footage continued to loop. This is what you've been doing while we've all been working our asses off to educate these kids. This is the kind of behavior you think is acceptable? Mrs. Davison had finally found her voice, and it was filled with righteous fury. Enough, she roared, silencing the room with a single word. Michael, while I understand your distress, I cannot condone your methods. This is completely inappropriate for a school setting. I stood tall, meeting her gaze. What's inappropriate, Mrs. Davison, is the infidelity that has been happening here. What's inappropriate is the lies and secrecy. What's inappropriate is allowing this kind of behavior to go unchecked. I turned to Susanna and Alex, who were now clinging to each other, their faces buried in their hands. You should both be ashamed of yourselves, I said, my voice dripping with scorn. You have betrayed everything this school stands for. You have betrayed your families, and you have betrayed your colleagues. Mrs. Davison's face was thunderous. Susanna and Michael, I want to see you both in my office immediately, she commanded. Consider yourselves suspended, effective immediately, pending a full investigation. Security, please escort them from the premises. Two burly custodians, their faces grim, stepped forward. Susanna and Alex, their shoulders slumped in defeat, allowed themselves to be led away, silent condemnation of the entire staff burning into their backs. The silence in the auditorium was deafening. I stood at the podium, my body trembling with adrenaline, the projector still casting its damning light. I felt a strange mix of emotions, relief, vindication, and a profound sense of sadness. What I did here was the right thing. All of them deserved to be exposed for their sinful and unethical behavior. My only regret is that I didn't do it earlier. Mrs. Davison cleared her throat, her gaze piercing. Michael, she said, her voice strained but controlled, while I acknowledge the gravity of the situation you have brought to light, I must also express my deep disappointment in your methods. Your actions were highly unorthodox, and I will need to consider the implications for your continued employment at this school. I nodded slowly, bracing myself. I knew this was coming. My career was likely over, but I couldn't bring myself to regret what I had done. I had exposed the truth, and that was all that mattered. I looked at Jane, who was giving me the slightest of approving nods. Maybe she would get a divorce. She deserved someone better than him. I stepped away from the podium, pushing through the stunned silence of my colleagues, and walked out of the auditorium into the uncertain future. The fresh air hit my face. The weight of the truth was a heavy one. I knew that the fallout from today would be far-reaching, but I also knew that I had done the right thing. The days following the staff meeting were a blur of legal paperwork, hushed whispers, and sideways glances. The school buzzed with gossip, the air thick with speculation and judgment. Susanna and Alex were gone, their careers in ruins, their reputations tarnished. I was suspended, pending a review of my actions. I knew it was a formality. My days at Harmony Creek Elementary were numbered. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. Susanna didn't contest anything, her lawyers eager to minimize the damage to her reputation. We divided our assets, signed the papers, and walked away, strangers bound only by the shared wreckage of our past. I found a small apartment on the other side of town, a sterile, impersonal space that felt nothing like home. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional siren or the muffled sounds of my neighbors. Sleep was still elusive, haunted by nightmares of betrayal and regret. I replayed the events of the past few weeks in my mind, searching for a different outcome, a way to avoid the pain and destruction. But there was none. Jane was also going through a divorce. I saw her occasionally, in the grocery store or at the local coffee shop. We'd exchange a few words, a shared acknowledgement of our mutual pain. We were both damaged, adrift in a sea of uncertainty. The hardest part was facing the looks of pity and concern from my friends and colleagues. They meant well, but their words felt hollow, inadequate. Nothing could erase the sting of betrayal, the humiliation of being publicly scorned. I spent my days packing up my classroom, sorting through years of memories, old lesson plans, student artwork, class photos, each item a painful reminder of the life I had lost. As I packed the last box, Mrs. Davison appeared in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "Michael," she said, her voice formal, "the school board has reached a decision regarding your employment." I braced myself, waiting for the inevitable. "While we acknowledge the difficult circumstances you were facing," she continued, "the board has determined that your actions were inappropriate and unprofessional. Your employment with Harmony Creek Elementary is terminated, effective immediately." I nodded slowly, accepting the verdict. It was over. My career, my marriage, my life as I knew it, all gone. "I understand," I said, my voice flat. Mrs. Davison hesitated, then softened her tone slightly. "Michael, you were a good teacher, a dedicated member of our staff. I'm truly sorry it had to end this way." "Thank you," I said, offering a weak smile. She turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "I hope you find peace, Michael," she said. "You deserve it." I watched her go, then turned back to the empty classroom. Peace. It felt like a distant, unattainable dream. But as I walked out of the school for the last time, I felt a flicker of something else, something that had been buried beneath the anger and despair. Hope. Maybe, someday, I could find peace. But revenge was still a dish that needed to be served. The termination stung, but it wasn't unexpected. Teaching had been my life, but now it felt tainted, like a chapter I needed to close. The divorce was finalized, the school was in my rearview mirror, and Susanna and Alex were probably lying low, licking their wounds. But it wasn't enough. They'd hurt me deeply, and I needed to even the score. That's when the idea hit me, the footage. The grainy, embarrassing footage of their tryst in the music room. It was just sitting on my hard drive, a digital monument to their infidelity. It wasn't just sitting there. I remembered reading about adult websites that paid for exclusive content. A shiver ran down my spine. It was a dark, morally questionable idea, but the lure of revenge was too strong to resist. I spent hours researching different websites, comparing their payouts and their terms of service. Finally, I settled on one that seemed reputable-ish. I created a fake account, uploaded the footage, and waited. The views started trickling in slowly, then exploded. The combination of the taboo subject matter and the fact that it featured two teachers from a small town proved irresistible. The money started rolling in, a steady stream of digital currency flowing into my account. I felt a surge of satisfaction, a sense of perverse justice. They had humiliated me publicly, and now they were being humiliated on a global scale. It wasn't about the money, although the money was nice. It was about power, about control, about reclaiming something that had been stolen from me. The guilt gnawed at me, of course. I knew it was wrong, that I was sinking to their level, but the anger was still there, burning hot, pushing me forward. Weeks turned into months. The money kept coming, and the footage continued to circulate. I imagined Susanna and Alex cringing with shame, knowing that their secret was out in the world for anyone to see. One evening, as I was scrolling through the comments on the website, I saw something that stopped me cold. Someone had recognized Susanna. They had posted her name, her school, her hometown. The secret was out. Panic set in. I deleted the footage, shut down the account, and tried to erase any trace of my involvement. But it was too late. The internet never forgets. I knew it was only a matter of time before the news reached Susanna and Alex. I braced myself for the fallout, the anger, the recriminations. But it never came. Instead, I heard through the grapevine that Susanna had moved away, started a new life in another state. Alex had done the same. They were gone, vanished to the anonymity of the wider world. I was left alone with my guilt, my money, and my lingering anger. Had I achieved justice, or had I simply perpetuated the cycle of pain and betrayal?